So, for our movie analysis project, I decided to watch Nightcrawler. It's directed by Dan Gilroy and it stars Jake Gyllenhaal, so you know it's going to be good. But it really just dove deep into the concepts we see in interpersonal communication and how we see social media and language. We see that this what they're trying to project on for their news company is the most important goal, and it is why we see Jake Gyllenhaal and his character seek out violent crimes in order to make newsworthy clips in order to give to this company. So really, just seeing how social media influences the things that we produce, and he was doing throughout the movie, it was very important. Um, and this knowledge played a role throughout the entire film. The second concept we see talking about is how perception and how our most common tendencies in perception can sometimes be a little debilitating because we don't fully evaluate the person before we get to know them. We just go off of what we think we know about them. And this really put the female lead, her name was Nina. She was the video production company director for the media coverage. So her and Jake Gyllenhaal's character Lewis really worked together closely to make sure that they had both the same goals in mind and all that kind of stuff. But Nina really suffered because her perception of Jake Gyllenhaal was based off of incorrect things that she perceived about him. And if we would have seen her dig a little deeper into his character, she could have potentially avoided the toxic and manipulative relationship that he held with her. The other theme we see happening in this movie is we see how they regulate interaction. Both of them work really hard to control the conversation because they're often making bets, and Jake Gyllenhaal's character, is trying to get some sexual favors out of her, and he does this by regulating their interaction. He'll maintain really heavy eye contact with her, and it's just a very closed off conversations that they usually have. They both have something that the other person wants, so how they go at it and negotiating it turned out to be really toxic and really manipulative on both of their behalf in a sense. But these nonverbal things we saw happening created a lot of tension for both the audience and for the characters participating. Um, Another theme that we see happen throughout the movie is they are negotiating price, and that often has to do with an analysis response. We they're analyzing the price for the same thing, so both parties come with a reasonable and fair judgment of what they think is right, and they analyze the other person's what they're saying and go back and forth to come to a conclusion together. This is really important in how they found a way to come to conclusion with their prices, and it really played a big role in how the two of them, and even in Jake Gyllenhaal's relationship with his coworker, we also see that he was negotiating price there, and it just has a lot to do with when you're analyzing a response, the steps that we take in order to do that. Um, Lastly, in terms of disclosing the self, we see that Lou really works hard to disclose the right parts of himself to people, and he unfortunately doesn't give Nina the opportunity to self disclose in a way that she would have felt consensual, because he does manipulate the situation and blackmail her in a sense. Um, we see how the self disclosure is kind of taken away from Nina, and she is unable to share pieces of her because Jake Gyllenhaal does some underground research into into her news company, and uses this sort of career level blackmail to be like, hey, I know you need what I have, and what I have is the best of the quality, and I know it'll bring your ratings up for your show, and that's what you wanted ultimately. But disclosing the self is difficult to see in this because she doesn't really get the opportunity to disclose the self, but the tactics are still there, and Jake Gyllenhaal does a really good job controlling how he discloses the self by only giving specific information to certain people, including even in the very last scenes when we see him speaking with a detective, and he's technically not in trouble for any crime, but he just was there and kind of acted like a catalyst for it. But when his story was it had a very strong foundation because he disclosed the exact right pieces, even without a lawyer. Often when we see somebody discussing something like that, they do it with a lawyer, and he did it without. And I thought that was really important to note in how disclosing the self worked in this relationship. Um, Overall, the movie was very good, and I would really recommend it. I think that it had a lot of ties to the things that we've been learning in this class, and it really gave a deeper insight into how not necessarily successful relationships work, but how to apply the concepts to a trickier sort of relationship. And it can be really helpful moving forward, analyzing relationships that you have with other people, saying, like, oh, is that, I can be doing everything right, but what could be doing that the other person is wrong in a sense. So I would 10 out of 10 recommend the movie, and I think it has a lot to do with our class. So thank you.